Have you ever thought, oh, I've got an hour spare, I'll just do some needle felting? Then time seems to whiz by, and before you know it, the kids or your other half are asking for their dinner, and you have to leave your project unfinished. Well, I'm going to share 10 simple tips that save me over 3 hours, and it will make needle felting much easier and help you to finish your amazing projects. This comes with a warning though, some of these needle felting hacks may even be considered cheating. So let's get started and show you some project ideas and quick ways to needle felt.
You mean like this?
Oops. Oh dear. And that's why I don't recommend trying to stab too quickly. No, these are much safer needle felting tips than that. Let's start with one thing that you may have already seen in felting kits. It's using polystyrene shapes or balls as a base. We're going to have a race to see which is quicker. Coating a polystyrene ball with a slither of carded Corriedale wool, or needle felting a ball the same size using the same wool, and all of the time-saving tips I'll share in the rest of this video. We'll see how I get on at the end.
Well, that's not difficult to guess which one wins that race. It's...
No, don't spoil it. Anyway, what you don't know is how easy or difficult it was to needle felt the carded Corriedale slither onto the poly ball, and how did the polystyrene behave when it came to decorating it.
Ooh.
But what if you want to make something that's a unique shape, and polystyrene isn't an option? Well, my next tip is about which wool to use to get the best shape of your project formed really quickly and easily. If you watched my previous video on when to stop stabbing, you'll know that I found rolling up fine merino roving wool and felting with a fine 40 gauge triangular needle was the quickest way to create a coloured object. However, I don't recommend that you do this, especially if you're a beginner at needle felting, because fine merino wool can be very difficult to felt into the right shape. It can also be harder to get a smooth finish than other methods. So my tip is to use coloured carded wool, such as this coloured carded Corriedale wool as I'm using here for this chicken I'm making. This method might be slightly more expensive than coating core wool with coloured wool, but it's fine for a small item. I'll put some details about wools I've used in the description below. Because the carded wool looks kind of all jumbled up, it's already got a head start on the process of meshing the wool strands together, so it needle felts really quickly. This wool is lovely and soft, and I'm using a fine 40 gauge triangular needle to form the shape. I'll explain why and talk about needles a bit more in a moment. It's taken me 20 minutes to needle felt the body, but we'll come back and see how long it takes me to finish this chicken later on. You might think my third tip is cheating, but probably not as much as my fourth tip. It's using laundry dryer balls as a base for your project. I bought these 100% wool laundry dryer balls on Amazon. They're about £8 or $10 for a pack of 4. They're really quite firm. Here I am squeezing it alongside a ball I've needle felted and it's slightly firmer. This will give you a good solid base and save you a lot of time and gives you pretty much a perfect bowl shape. But what can you make with them? Lots of ideas I've seen are for Christmas baubles, but I wanted to try out some ideas that aren't seasonal, maybe something cute. So I came up with this design for a panda. I found that if I stabbed one area of the ball in the same direction, it makes a flat base for it to sit on without rolling. Panda is already mostly white, so I wrapped some black tops wool around its waist, just below the centre, straight onto the ball. This needle felted onto the ball just the same way as it would onto core wool. The next thing I did brings me to my next tip, which you might frown upon and really think is cheating. Using my drawing to make a template, cut out the panda's black markings around the eye from a black pre-made craft felt square. You can buy 100% wool sheets of felt, rather than the cheap craft felt squares which are usually made from polyester. Using ready-made sheets of felt means that obviously you don't need to needle felt a flat piece of wool first, or have to worry about getting a neat edge when you attach wool. I just cut the right shapes out and was able to needle felt them onto the head quite easily. I'd be interested to know in the comments whether you think this is cheating or just a useful technique. This helped with the ears too. I cut 2 ear shapes in felt and then rolled up some black tops wool and attached it to one side. Then wrapped some more wool around the ear to make it thicker. Having this felt shape to start with made it easier to keep both ears the right shape and size. However, be warned that if you're trying to cut out a very small circle, for example, it can be difficult to cut nice round shapes out of felt, as I discovered when I tried to cut out the eyes for a panda bag for Ozzy. Nice bag, Ozzy.
Thank you. It's designer by Prada, you know.
It's more panda than Prada.
How rude.
Okay, anyway, where was I? Right, yes, tip 5. For speed, you can't beat ready-made plastic or glass eyes. These are 9mm black plastic eyes or safety eyes, but as we're not attaching them in the way they were designed, they can't be considered safe for children's toys. Even though we're going to glue them in, they could be pulled out as I'll demonstrate in a moment. Plastic or glass eyes also have the advantage that they give that alive look because they're nice and shiny and reflect the light. You just need to make quite a large hole with an awl. Check that the eye fits and then glue them in. But don't do what I did here, which was put some glue on the eye, drop it, getting glue on the mat and on your finger, mop it up with a tissue, gluing some tissue to your finger, and by the time you put the eye into the hole, the glue has dried too much and immediately sticks to the felt before you've even had a chance to push it all the way into the head. Thanks for the sympathy, guys. I had to pull this eye out, which brought the piece of felt with it, so I made another, but this time I put the eye straight into the hole as soon as I applied some glue. I do really love how you can have a do-over if things go wrong with this craft. To make the plastic eyes look that bit more special, I'd recommend adding a bit of twisted coloured wool around the edge. As you can see on the Panda Cat, that had a black line all around the outside edge of the eyes. But here I'm going to add just a bit of white topswool around the bottom half of the eye to make the plastic eye stand out from the black behind, and it makes him look upwards and a bit cuter. This next tip goes against what I've said in previous videos about how much to felt items, but it will save you lots of time. Basically, in certain situations, it's okay to leave things softly felted. So, for example, when I needle felted this panda's arms and legs, I left them quite soft, much softer than I'd needle felt a head. Because I won't be felting any details onto the arms and legs, and they're just decorative, I didn't need to felt them for very long, and can leave them quite squishy. If you want to needle felt faster, it's a good idea to get yourself a multi-needle tool holder. I love my Clover 3 needle tool holder, as it's ideal for using on small projects. Every time you stab the wool, you're felting 3 times as fast. However, as the needles are close together, if you try to use it with 3 thicker 36 gauge needles, it feels really hard to stab the wool. I also find the gauge of the needle you use with which wool can have a big effect on how long it takes you to create a shape. If you're using a carded wool or core wool that feels rough, the sort of wool that might make a scratchy jumper, you might find a thicker lower gauge needle, such as a 36 gauge triangular needle, will form the initial shape much more efficiently and quickly. But when I felted a finer wool like here, where I'm attaching some fine bamboo fibres and red merino topswool to a polystyrene ball, I'm using a fine 40 gauge triangular needle as I find this catches the finer strands of wool more effectively. I also use this needle to shape the arms and legs for the panda as I was using fine black merino topswool. My 8th tip will show you how to get less fuzzy finish in the quickest time possible. As you probably know, it can take a lot of stabbing to try and get your project looking less fuzzy. But I've found a technique that will help you get all the fine strands of wool to lie down and achieve a neater, quicker finish. Take your finest needle, I'm using a 42 gauge triangular, and angle it at 45 degrees to the surface of your project. Drag the needle across the surface, stabbing as you go, so that it catches the strands of wool that are sticking up. You'll find it easier to look across the surface, so that you can see the strands that need catching, and keep changing the direction you drag the needle in. Of course, another even quicker way to do this is to buy yourself a defuzzer and cut all the strands off, or use scissors. However, I do think that stabbing the strands down as much as possible will stop new stray strands from appearing after the project has been handled. My next tip is all about preparation. This can be the really fun creative bit where you decide how you want your finished item to look.
But I took a lot of preparation.
Yeah, of course you did. But how does preparation help save time? Well, have a guess in the comments which you think took longer to needle felt, this baby seal or the chicken I started making earlier. Don't forget I've used a laundry ball for the main part of the seal's body, needle felted the tail and head from carded wool, then felted some flippers from the same wool. I had to glue some plastic eyes into the head and finish it off with a nose and a mouth. So how long do you think? Well, it actually took me an hour and 56 minutes, not counting tea breaks, of course. So do you think it took me more or less time to needle felt all of the chicken's body, including the beak, the red comb and wattles?
Look at you knowing what they're called.
Yeah, might have googled that. Anyway, the chicken from start to finish took an hour and 16 minutes, but because it's a lot smaller than the seal, it was quite a lot quicker to felt. However, the eyes and details were quite fiddly, so I have to balance keeping it small while trying not to make details more difficult to needle felt. For example, the panda took me 45 minutes longer than the seal because there were more parts to it, such as the black strip around the waist, the legs, the ears, and the white detail around the eyes. So to get back to the race I started earlier, I needle felted some white carded wool slither by rolling it into a ball and needle felting it roughly the same size as the polystyrene ball. With the polystyrene ball, I spread out exactly the same white carded wool and needle felted it onto the surface using a fine needle. I had to make sure the wool was spread evenly and added a bit more wool to areas where I could see the polystyrene showing through. This part of the process was fairly easy. I then used some pins and cotton as guides to felt a snowflake design on each side, which I'll show you finished in a moment. However, with another polystyrene ball, I thought I'd needle felt some lovely shiny bamboo tops and red merino tops mixed with red Angelina fibres to make a sparkly bauble. At this point I really struggled, which brings me to my 10th tip. Be careful about which wool you choose to finish your item with. When it came to working with the bamboo tops, I realised it's really floaty. It's so fine it's very hard to control and was really fiddly to get it to go where you wanted it to go. Also, the Angelina fibres wanted to fly off everywhere at every opportunity, and it was really difficult to get it to stay down. And even though I stabbed and stabbed, I still had some shiny fibres sticking up. Also, every time I handle this bauble, they start springing back up. So maybe avoid bamboo tops and Angelina fibres if you're a beginner. I'd love to hear what you think about this bauble in the comments. I'll come on to the disadvantage of using polystyrene in a moment, but one of the big advantages of using the polystyrene shape is saving time. The polystyrene ball that I coated in carded wool only took 16 minutes, whereas the ball I felted from scratch took a full 45 minutes of stabbing before it was felted firmly enough, and I used as many of the tips from this video as I could. The one disadvantage that I found with the polystyrene ball was that because I had been poking the ball at the top and the bottom an awful lot as I had been attaching the segments of wool, those areas became very soft and squishy. All that needle felting I'd done had broken down the polystyrene a lot, and you can actually see that it's changed the shape of the bauble. Fortunately, it's not too obvious, but something to bear in mind if you decide to use polystyrene shapes. After following my cotton guides to make sure I could get a neat snowflake pattern on the other polystyrene ball, I think it ended up looking quite good. If you'd like to learn how to create neat fine lines like this, you might want to watch this video next, where I show you how to felt face details and fine lines for mouths, which can also be used for snowflakes. Thanks for watching.